Hello. You lot are the hardcore. You've stayed to the very end. Congratulations, well done. You've battled everything to be here. The weather is an interesting one here in Prague, you know. Don't like the weather? Just wait 5 minutes. I tried to write down a few words to describe Radiodays Europe this year. I've written down snow, beer, meat, knowledge, and fun. Okay, they were my words, all right? So I think we're in the last throes of Radiodays Europe, so we always like to have a bit of fun and a bit of knowledge as well, and we've got a fantastic set of speakers for you. If you've never seen this session before, this is the traditional end to Radiodays Europe. Just when you thought you've had as much information as you can possibly take, we try and cram a little bit more into you, and we've got some great speakers. The format is really easy. Basically, everyone has about 5 or 6 minutes or so. They come up to the old lectern here, and they're going to share 5 ideas, thoughts, pieces of information, insights about a particular topic, and that's it. And at the end of the session, we've had 30 ideas in 45 minutes, and then we will segue seamlessly into the announcement for next year. Is that all good? Yeah? Everyone cool with that? There we go. You see? That is what a drunk audience sounds like. All right, let's see. Let's spin the wheel and see who comes up first. Tanya, come on up. Come on, give her a round of applause as she comes up to the podium here. Now, before you get underway, Tanya, you are a behavioral scientist. This is correct?
Yes, I am. That is what I am.
Can you sum up the behavior of all these people here over the last few days? What kind of people have we got, and how is their behavior?
Curious, insightful, inspiring. I know you were looking for a joke, Nick, but the idea that I've sat through a lot of panels of people speaking English as a second language most of the time and conducting industry-specific speeches is just mind-blowing to me as an American, because I think there's about 15 of us in the United States who could do that. So I'm hugely inspired by watching that and by watching all the amazing things that you are doing for your industry.
Okay, if you press the clicker, let's see if it works. There we go.
There we are.
You've got your 6 minutes or so. Off you go.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you. So I'm Tanya. As Nick said, I'm a behavioral scientist, and my career is very nonlinear. I started actually working with military families and in counterintelligence, and then found my way to join the circus. That's what I call it. I worked in American politics for many years, and I worked for labor unions, most recently for teachers in the great state of Texas, which is where I live. The last 5 years, I've been a business writer, coach, and educator. I write a column for Forbes on leadership negotiation and now well-being and burnout. And throughout this nonlinear career, I've been trying to understand how people's values drive their choices and their behaviors. So these are some of the folks that I've worked with. Maybe you've seen some folks that are familiar there. But I'm going to talk to you about 5 tips to squash burnout when you are the boss. Now, I can kind of make it out. Raise your hand if you're a boss. And that might be folks at work, or maybe you have a family or a community. Yeah, so at least half of you, probably. All right, so here are the 5 tips. The first is to admit you are burnt out and stop judging yourself. You are not alone, okay? An October 2022 poll of global workers conducted by the Future Forum found that 40% of us across this great world are actually experiencing workplace burnout as defined by the World Health Organization, which is a chronic feeling of exhaustion, cynicism, or loss of control. This is at its highest that it's been. And it's not just workers. Executives and bosses just like you are also suffering. 40% reported experiencing increasing levels of work-related stress and anxiety. So, here's the thing. We have a saying in Texas. As you might imagine, we really like tacos, and we say that tacos are still delicious even when they fall apart. Okay? So as the boss, you can have a private moment of falling apart and still serve your purpose in this world. But you got to admit it to yourself and embrace the mess that burnout creates. And that doesn't, by the way, have to be done publicly. I know for some generations it is done publicly, but if you're not of that generation and you just need a moment by yourself to admit it, and you don't have to do it anywhere else, if you're like me and you like to eat messy tacos in the dark with glasses on, around no one else, you can do that. But the important thing is to admit it, because if you're trying to help others or yourself, you got to make sure that you're doing it for yourself first. The second tip is stay curious, not furious. You can't be angry and filled with wonder at the same time. Our brains just actually don't allow for it. Wonder and awe are the cognitive functions that create the neurobiology, so the positive brain chemicals that help alleviate stress and depression. But more importantly, it prepares our brain for action, whereas being furious prepares us to fight or flee, which is not necessarily a good decision framework to have. So to be successful in this industry, in radio, podcasting, and audio, we need to continually create our way towards success and innovation. And anticipating the adventure you're taking your team, company, or organization on is part of the deal. The third tip is refocus on purpose, especially our shared purpose. And when I helped 65,000 school teachers in Texas get through their own burnout, a lot of it had to do with refocusing on their purpose. Purpose helps us locate our core values. When we refocus and energize those values, we can bust free of something that's called the doom loop, and again, that's survival brain. Purpose is our why. It reminds us that we are here on this planet for a reason, and that every sacrifice we've made matters, right? Because we're building a better world. We're absolutely building a better world through radio and podcasting and audio. There were some amazing panels during this conference about that. Now, as the boss, you need to remember that people follow the leader, and take it from somebody who studies human behavior for a living and writes about leadership. Research has shown that modeling best behavior is the most effective. So if you're telling your staff to take time off or to pace themselves, and you're not taking time off, you're not figuring out a way to renew yourself, that's just not honest. You've got to be honest. You've got to do for yourself what you're asking others to do. Fourth tip, be a protective steward of those around you. What does that mean? Be emotionally present. Well, what does that mean? That means, are you listening to folks when they're telling you how they're feeling and what they're going through? Are you recognizing their emotions, and are you honoring them? Are you being positive and supportive and encouraging them towards constructive action? Because that is your job as the boss. Your team, your family, and your community, they need you to be a beacon of safety, right? And you might inside still feel like a messy taco of safety, but that's okay, right? Because if you're honest about that mess while also being protective, you're creating psychological safety for your team, and you're being a leader who creates a space where people really can heal, and that's a big deal. Right, the last and most important tip, you need to steal every moment of joy and drive it like you stole it, okay? Have your Gran Turismo moment. It's really important. I talked a little bit about this during the conference. I'm fascinated by mirror neurons. It's a specific type of neuron that we build when we do things in synchronous action with each other. And the research actually indicates that one way to stave off burnout is to do things together, to maximize that social connection. And everyone in here, you are all very powerful people. You're CEOs and you're executive producers and you're directors, and you do really important things. And so I encourage you to really use your power and steal back your time and spend it very lavishly on your staff. Take a moment to sit down with them and have a coffee or a bagel or something and tell them how great you think their work is, and be really specific. It's one thing to say, hey, you're doing a great job. It's another thing to say, that story you produced was fantastic. Those readers that you connected, or the audience that you connected with, that was amazing. Because when you tell them a very specific thing, they know that you're paying attention. Okay? Because squashing burnout, and we all have an obligation since we all seem across the globe to be suffering from it, squashing burnout is most certainly a team project. And when we connect and create moments of synchronous joy, there's absolutely nothing we can't heal from.
Round of applause, Tanya. Well done. Excellent timing as well. Very good. Your timings are superb. You should be on the radio. And tacos are still delicious, even when they fall apart, which is very good. Let's spin the wheel again. It's Tom Webster. Come on down, Tom. Welcome, sir. Have you had a good Radio Days?
I've had a fantastic Radio Days. I love coming here every year. My wife is with me this year, so it's been a heck of a trip.
Brilliant. And for those who don't know who you are, you're going to tell everyone what it is you do, and you're going to talk about something to do with podcasting, I'm suspecting.
I am indeed. I'm one of the old men of podcasting. I'm sad to say. I'm with Sounds Profitable, soundsprofitable.com. We're in the business of helping podcasting grow, and I've been speaking about podcasting to this very crowd now for the last nearly a decade, I think. So
the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. I was delighted and honored to be asked to give 5 good ideas, but before I do that, I want to give you an example of the quality of my ideas, so you understand the quality of my thinking. The last idea I had was last week, and that was, I don't need to bring a winter coat to Prague. And it's that kind of cutting-edge thinking that I want to bring you now. So instead of bringing you 5 really good ideas, I'm going to give you 5 great questions to help make your podcast better. These could be questions, you could ask them in a survey if you want, you could ask them in a formal way, but it's really how you talk to people when you talk to people about your podcasts. If you ask people, have you heard my podcast? What do you think of it? Do you like it? You're going to get answers like, it's interesting. It's funny. Those are spectacularly unhelpful, right? They may make you feel good in the moment, but they're not designed to help you make your podcast better. I'm going to start with a pretty good question, and we're going to make it better. Here's a question your marketing department wants you to ask. Where did you discover my podcast? Now, your marketing team wants to know, did you find it through search? Did you find it through an app so we can increase our budgets and allocate our marketing accordingly? But the answer is likely going to be a recommendation from friends and family. You don't have a friends and family budget, I don't think. So here's a better question, and that's, how did you discover my podcast? It prompts a better answer. Did you find it through search? What exactly did you search for? Why were you searching for it? What else did you find in that search and reject? What drove you to that? What is the need in your life that led you to this? If it was a recommendation from friends or family, what was that conversation about? Why were you talking about podcasts? What was the topic of your conversation? If you get a little bit of detail on the process, the how that people used to discover your podcast, you get some real insight on where they slot it into their lives, and that's what's really important. Second really good question, what other podcasts do you listen to? Again, it's a useful marketing question for things like cross-promotion and feed swaps, but I ask it to find out who people are when they're at home. What are the other things that they listen to, watch, or read that flesh them out as a three-dimensional human for me? If you have a sports podcast and you talk to somebody and you are the only sports podcast they listen to, they probably don't listen to you for sports. If you are the 6th of 7 sports podcasts that they listen to, then there must be one special thing about your show that keeps them coming back in a sea of other sports shows. But what other podcasts do people listen to really helps you round them out as a three-dimensional human, and that's really important. The third question I'm going to give you, I'm going to start with a terrible question. How long should my podcast be? This is a terrible question. It's unanswerable. Anytime people tell you this is how long your podcast should run 180 degrees in the other direction. This is a bad question, but I'll give you a tweak that is a really good question, and that's this. Should my podcast be shorter or longer? You're not angling for a time period here. What you're asking is, what would you do more of, or what would you cut? If someone says, I like your show, I wish it were shorter, something has to go. And that's the thing that you want to direct this question to. What is the thing that has to go if someone would make your podcast shorter? And if someone would make your podcast longer, the opposite. What's the thing that cuts off before it really gets going? What's the thing you just wish you could hear a little bit more of on my show? That is a much better question than how long should my podcast be? Fourth good question, and this is a two-parter. It's a bonus. I'm throwing in 6 ideas. This one is as free as the other 5. How would you describe my podcast to a friend? Now, here's the challenge when you're talking to somebody about this. Get them to imagine a specific person and get them to use in their language how they would describe your show to that specific person. If you start talking in generalities about, well, I bet people would like this show, I don't care about people. I want to know about this specific person. How would you describe in your own terms your podcast to a friend? And what you're going to hear is likely going to be very different from how you would describe it in your marketing material or in your pitch or in the description that you use when you submit it to a directory. You're going to hear something very different. You're going to get a glimpse into what people actually value, right? So how would you describe my show to a friend? And here's the bonus. Now describe that friend. What do they wear? What do they look like? What's their name? What do they do for a living? Why did you make this recommendation? You could have recommended a nice Czech beer. You could have recommended maybe different shoes with that outfit. But no, you recommended this podcast. Who is that person, and why did you make that recommendation? If you answer just those 2 questions, that sort of part A and part B, you've gone a long way to developing insight for what actually is driving your podcast for the people that have discovered it and for the people that are fans of it. And here's the last question, And this question has been reliably in my back pocket for 25 years of doing focus groups. It's generally the last question I ask when I'm talking to respondents in a survey or some kind of qualitative setting, and that's this. If my podcast or show, whatever, died tomorrow, shuffled off this mortal coil, was no more, what single thing would you miss the most? People often have difficulty expressing themselves positively with a positive vocabulary that is precise. But people can be very precise about things that they would miss. Read any Yelp review about a restaurant or any restaurant review for what is lacking in a service, and you'll get some very articulate people. What would you miss? Now, it might be that people would miss nothing. And that, my friends, is a problem that you need to work on. And I hope that those 5 good questions will make you many more than 5 great podcasts. I'm Tom Webster. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Tom. Excellent. Good work, sir. Tom Webster, he's like the Gandalf of podcasting here with his wise words. Okay. Sadia, come on now. Please welcome Sadia to the podium now. How you doing?
Good, very good.
Now,
Anyone single in the room?
Oh.
No? Okay.
You come here for a date?
Love?
Right, okay. Now, either you don't like the people on the stage or you desperately need to leave and get your flight. So after you've done your tips, instead of going back to your seat, you're literally going to go there and pick up your bag and walk off, right?
I might not make it, guys, but it's going to be fine. This is way more important.
Okay. Now, you're a comedian, a writer, and a podcaster as
Yes.
well. It's very good. And your topic today is what?
Self-promotion.
Self-promotion. Okay, you've got your thing there. You can
Thank
click on the
you
green
so
button to
much.
go. And away you go.
Thank you so much. Welcome to the last session of Radio Days. Well, you survived. Well done to you. So I'm a comedian and I wrote this book. I'm just going to tell you now. It's called Sex Bomb. The reason I wrote it is because, often Muslim women are always talked about and stereotyped, and I really wanted to own my narrative, and so that's why I did that. I think I've spoken to quite a few people in different sessions this week, this event. They've told me they're not good at self-promotion, and I think I can understand because it feels like you're just talking about yourself, but self-promotion is kind of layered, and it doesn't have to feel like a chore. You can enjoy it. It's not a bad thing to say positive things about yourself. And it doesn't have to just be self-promotion. It can just be promotion, like appreciating your colleagues or your field can also be an example of self-promotion because it's your relationship with it. So I'm going to give you 5 tips on self-promotion. That's my Instagram. Can everyone follow me, please? Anyway, never mind. Self-promotion. Thank you. There's nothing naughty on there. Okay, these are my 5 tips. So firstly, you have to believe in yourself. That's not always constant, and that's fine. But you have to do your best to believe in yourself at wherever you are, because ultimately you're selling yourself to other people. And if you don't really believe in yourself, then it's going to be a little bit harder to kind of convince other people of what you're doing and their investment in you. So believe in yourself. It can be a little bit hard sometimes, but unpack it and look at the reasons why it's hard and kind of try and deal with it rather than letting it fester. Sound good? I believe in myself? Yay, okay, good. That's one person, thank you. I don't know who that is, but I love you. Okay, the next bit is get over yourself. And this is sometimes our editor in our head. It tells us funny things. It's like, oh, there's too many people. But I'm just picturing you all naked right now. You can laugh, guys. It's all right. Are you still on work mode? No, getting over yourself is like when a challenge feels too big, or if you feel like you haven't made it yet, and you're meant to be, you are where you're meant to be. So yeah, just get out of your way, enjoy what you're doing, and I think it's a subtle shift from being kind of a bit like glass half full to glass half empty. And if you feel again like there's obstacles, I think it's really good to like write things down and like have goals as opposed to just being in your head. And so those are tasks. First of all, writing things down and journaling is really helpful for getting things out of your head. But then also you can break things down into manageable chunks. And so if one of your goals is to kind of like increase your listenership, you can kind of really approach that in a way that feels authentic to you. So a lot of you will want to be promoting your audio and podcast. And so cross promotion is also a really good example of self-promotion, going on other shows and then like you're plugging yours, letting other guests come on yours, or doing jingles. That's a really good example. And tagging people, being part of your community, again, is a really good thing. So, like, a lot of people in the industries, is like, you know, they just don't want to be part of the big kind of hype and stuff like that. But that's the industry that we're in. So you can't not promote yourself. Like, and yes, good work will find kind of listenerships. But if you've worked really hard, then you deserve to kind of have a big audience and a following. And it doesn't mean that you're just trying to be famous or whatever. You know, like you've earned this. So really push yourself and your projects. So I'm not doing well for timing, guys, but never mind. I always run the light. The next...
Keep clicking. If you click, these will come...
Oh, am I clicking?
Yep.
So believe in yourself.
Yep.
Oh,
Keep
I'm
going.
late. Thanks for that. You're late too, Nick. Get over yourself. I have to get over myself. The next one is be less emotional. Like, we're all emotional beings, and it's really important for the work that we do to create content that's original and authentic and that reflects us basically. But there's a business aspect to what we're doing, and you know, hissy fits and tantrums won't really get us across the line, I don't think. They can be fun though, but no. They're for like the drinks that we had last night. So be less emotional. There's always a way around a problem. So when you're not in your head or upset about something, you can be more strategic. So it's a big advice that I try to go by. My next tip is to review and reassess. And what I'm really subtly trying to nod to is about change. Change is good. Sometimes we don't always like change, but we have to kind of move along with the industry, which is very fast changing, and think about our goals. Are we still meeting them? Have we already exceeded them? How do we keep challenging ourselves and growing and adapting to change as well? So I think that's really important. If other podcasts are not doing so well or the environment isn't doing so well, how can you be resilient and overcome those challenges without letting it get too heavy? My last tip, which you'll all be very familiar with in self-promotion, is sales. It's a numbers game. So yes, we have to promote ourselves to be successful and to kind of convert and get listeners and all those good things. So it's really, really important to kind of like get revenue, pay your bills, pay your employees and stuff like that. So again, like do have some sort of metrics. Don't let it just be in your head. Like, look at your audiences, your competitors, and do your best, basically. But your best is good enough. I'm just doing really good for time, actually. But yeah, so my last tip is, if you want to scan my QR code, you can get a copy of my book, and it's really cheap. You've been all amazing. Thank you for supporting Radio Days. It's been a pleasure to be here. I've been Sadia Azmat. Thank you.
Thank you, Sadia. Well done.
Thank
Very
you.
good. And she's off. She's off. It's a mic drop. She leaves a QR code on the screen and off she goes in a puff of smoke. Thank you, Sadia. Please welcome David. David Fernández, Quijada. Hello, sir. If you press next, you're... Yeah, that's... Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Boom. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well.
Good. You are Spanish but living in Switzerland, is this correct? Excellent. Correct. And on my official piece of paper, it says you're a strategist. Is this right?
Well, I'm more a researcher or an analyst turned into foresighter and strategist. So, several things there.
And I believe you're going to be talking about the future.
The future of
This
radio.
is exciting.
Yes.
All right, off you go, sir.
Thank you. Well, the first one is for decision makers and managers. You are surrounded by hype and buzz. They are everywhere, and they are making so much noise that it's becoming more and more difficult to make well-informed decisions. My idea is think long-term. More importantly, do not just think long-term, but act accordingly. If you have a long-term vision, just follow it. If you don't have it, just get one. That's the best moment. Second idea, this is about artificial intelligence. Of course, talking about the future, I had to talk about generative artificial intelligence. It's here to stay, so embrace it. It's not just hype. If you have listened to the samples available of Radio GPT, you know what I'm talking about. Its output is predictable, it's not very original, but it's not far from many hit radio stations. And this would satisfy millions of listeners. So my idea is, appoint an AI explorer in your organization. Tomorrow, first thing in the morning. It could be a new hire, or it could be someone who is already working in your team. At least one person. Set goals for that person. Free that person from other tasks. This cannot be something on top of. Put this as part of his/her KPIs. By doing this, expect your organization to find the best way to use generative AI to increase productivity among producers and journalists, add new options to the toolbox of your technical staff, generate output for your digital media properties, or include this in your programs. I'm thinking about a show where AI is another character or participant. Third idea, do different things, do things differently. With generative artificial intelligence and all its applications, radio in the long term can only win by differentiation. In a race to the bottom, radio will lose. In a race to the top, radio may have more chances thanks to its expertise and creativity. Radio, as an industry, needs to position itself in the audio space as a premium service. And I'm not talking monetization here. Premium equals distinctiveness. And distinctiveness means two things. The first thing is doing different things, bringing unique content, exploring new avenues. Second, doing things differently, surprising your audience, turning around your format. Generative AI is very good at average things, so you cannot fight in those terms. So I encourage you to run your own distinctiveness test. What do you do that your competitors don't? What do your competitors do that you don't offer? What is unique in your show in terms of topic, format, treatment, or personalities? Do these things work? Building on my previous idea, I bring you an example of doing things differently. It's about your weather and traffic reports. Breaking news. They are about to become as obsolete as classified ads in newspapers. You are an intermediary between the data owner and the audiences, and you are going to be disintermediated sooner than later. The data owner can go directly to audiences, and some of them are already doing. And they can do that with additional features, more in-depth information, and direct integration in the IT systems, especially in the car dashboard. This has already happened with smart speakers. So you need to understand where your power is. And I think that your power is sometimes not just in the content, but in the context. So, idea, get rid of your weather and traffic reports. If this sounds too radical and you don't want to do that, then focus on content, but work on the context too. In this area, your competitors, radio's competitors, do not play editorial. They are just data providers. So if you work on context, you add a unique value proposition. How do you do that? Adding journalism or adding entertainment to your data. So what about a quiz about the weather forecast? Finally, this one is about audience measurement. Metrics like reach, market share, or listening time are great and you need them, but you also need to move further. You need to understand what audiences are doing with the content that they are getting from you. So, do they learn things by listening to you? Do you keep them updated about what's happening in music? Do you help them to follow the local cultural scene or public debates? Do you help them to manage their moods? The idea is that you should add individual and social value to the measurement that you are doing with your current audience research. When you understand what value you deliver to whom, you have two tasks. First, use value results internally to support decisions in terms of content and scheduling. Second, use value results externally to raise the profile of your station and to reach out to stakeholders, including advertisers. Finally, consider adding a premium in your rate card for your most valuable programs. Thank you.
There you go. Brilliant. Thank you very much, sir. Well, on perfect timing. Perfect timing. You can go back to your radio stations and say to your boss, hey, I know what we need to do. We need to appoint an AI explorer. And they will wonder what you've been smoking here in Prague. But it's a really good point. I've had more conversations about AI over the last couple of days than anything, and that's a really, really good point. Thank you so much. All the way from Australia, give Angela a round of applause as she comes on up. G'day. Now, I went to your session yesterday, which was excellent. And you had a few Australian stereotypes in there. You had mullets and snakes and things like that. Can we expect any of that today?
Oh, that was the exclusive for yesterday. You had to come to my full-on session to get the mullets and the snakes.
It was very good.
Let's see, a bit of Sydney maybe.
Angela is head of Innovation Lab at ABC in Australia. And what are you going to be talking about today?
I want to talk about giving young people the ways that they can, let me start again, building teams who can reach young people.
Building teams who can reach young people. Excellent. What we need to know. Off you go.
Thanks. I head up the Innovation Lab for the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, and that means that we're looking 1 to 2 years into the future for what are the trends that are going to affect us, everything from AI through to new platforms for younger audiences. And we test and learn to try and work out how that can affect our strategy. But before that, I've been head of digital for ABC Radio. I've worked on podcast commissioning and some of our first digital podcasts, and I think I'm in the right room to say radio people are my favourite people. So 5 ideas for building teams who reach young audiences. Are you a young person? Do we have some young people here, the future of radio? Yes. From the people I've met so far, I feel like radio is in really good hands. Young people in the room, I hope your boss has given you some decision-making power. People who are maybe not so much a young person, and I'm thinking sort of 18 to 30 when I talk about a young person. Young at heart, that doesn't count, that's nice. You can be young at heart, but that's not what I'm thinking about here. No, your role is to create some structures where young people can have decision-making influence. If you give young people enough rope, they can do some brilliant creative things. Give them some autonomy and trust, and that goes a long way. I think we probably all have examples of being that young person, having somebody trust us, having somebody take a risk on us, and it's probably why a lot of us have ended up where we are today. The internet is full of subcultures. Now go niche and do it well. I think we should all be on the same page by now that we know younger audiences are spending a lot more time on digital content. We all use the internet. We know there's a lot of content on the internet, more than anyone needs. Particularly now we've got ChatGPT adding to the mix as well. We're just going to have more content than we need. So what you can do there is find your niche. I mean, that's the kind of beauty for audiences, right? Like if you're really into cross-stitch, fondue, you can find your people. You can connect on the internet. So if you can work out your niche to lean into and do really well, that's where you can have success. At the ABC, we've been getting vertical video talent in who do a niche really well. And this is like sourdough baking, art history, science, health, gaming, things that we've always been doing. And we've had about 15 million views in 6 months. So you can build a big audience by going niche. Here's one place where we have gone niche. A few years ago, we launched an account on Instagram called ABC Queer, aimed at 18 to 24 year-old LGBTQIA plus young people. That seemed pretty niche, but in the years since, ABC's gone on to get the rights to Sydney Mardi Gras for broadcast, and World Pride came to Sydney this year as well. So for our social accounts on TikTok and Instagram, we got in Rainbow History class to be our very first queer respondent. Let me play you a short clip. Oh, we don't have sound.
We got sound on the clip.
Storefront windows. Australia has long had Mardi Gras, but for the first time, it has World Pride. We'll be celebrating one of the first events, Mardi Gras Fair Day, with a live from me, your queer respondent, Rudy Jean Rigg, as well as the ABC News team. Put your questions in the comments because I'm going to be giving you FaceTime vibes this weekend with a cheeky adventure around the event. I want to answer your questions about World Pride and Australia's queer history.
Number 3, stay authentic to your station or brand. So those genres I was just mentioning there, whether it was, sourdough baking or gaming or health, they're things that we've been doing for years at the ABC. We were leaning into our legacy. So if with TikTok in particular you think dancing videos aren't for you, don't do them. The kids don't want you to do them either. Here's some of what we've been doing in this space. So on the left, our elections analyst who's been on broadcast TV for years, Anthony Green, doing election coverage, our sourdough influencer, art history, Indigenous, science, regional, doing things that really mean a lot to us at the ABC. Number 4, set up the scaffolding and then get out of the way. If you're not in the target demo, you probably have a different role here. You wouldn't put somebody who didn't know anything about radio in your content director role. So put somebody who really understands the platforms and really understands the audience in control of your platforms. How do you make sure that they have access to quick decision making, to budgets, to the resources they need to do the job? After all, I think you don't want your competition getting the ideas. If you don't give the support and set up that scaffolding, that young person with the fantastic idea will probably pitch it to somebody else or set up their own startup to compete against you. And lastly, stand strong in the face of criticism because it will come. I think when you're trying to do something new, you're trying to do change. Change is hard. Change doesn't feel good for any of us. But if you are sure of the change that you're trying to do, it is worth sticking with it. And I think back to when we started ABC Queer a few years back, and smart people I trust, kind of advised that, maybe now's not the right time. Is this really the right subculture to go for? But in retrospect, you can never have done something too soon. So stand strong when people criticise, and just make that change that you need to now. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you. That was great. Good job. Excellent. Okay. By the process of elimination. Olle, hello. Please welcome him. Welcome him to the podium.
Hello.
How are you?
Really good.
Good. All the way from Sweden. How's Sweden?
It's the same weather there as here.
Yeah, okay. Now, what do you do?
I'm the news commissioner for Swedish radio, so I commission podcasts and news and different formats, clips, linear, podcasts, everything, basically, to do with audio.
Okay, but what are you going to be talking about today? Because this is exciting.
Quality behind the hype.
Ooh, okay. Quality behind the hype. Let's have a little listen. Off you go.
Yeah, so basically I work for Swedish Radio, the Swedish broadcaster, the public service company, and I also co-founded Nordic AI Journalism. And I've been talking and listening to a lot of these kind of AI conversations today. So some of my takeaways or these tips are to do with that. So the first one is that you have to define your strategic goals in all this AI hype that is going on. It's a hype, it's here to stay, but still it's a hype. And there's a lot of commercial interests behind this hype at the moment, so we should never forget that. And then when we look at all the cool things we can do with AI and generative models or these LLMs or whatever have you, of course, there are 10,000 of different projects that we could design and set up and put money and efforts in. But we have to always go back to our strategic goals, our mission. Why are we there? and to really try to use that as a determinator for what kind of projects we go into in the AI field. So my second one is when you start off with AI innovation or exploration, start using AI rather to add value in your products than to replace stuff that you already have. Because, for example, I showed an example this morning about German radio station RBB launching an automated weather service with synthetic voice and AI. And they didn't have that in their product, so it was an added value. And it also didn't cause any problems with the trade unions in the company who said, you know, you're replacing staff. So that's a tip from me. The third one is go from broadcast chunks to digital atoms. And some of you who know me, you know that I've been talking about this before. I think that we tend to focus too much on the long formats when we talk about audio. And there's a whole world of kind of news atoms and short news clips there that are really there and can be very engaging to people. I mean, if you see a piece of content in front of you, if it says 45 minutes there or an hour, or if it says 45 seconds, well, it's a lower bar, it's a lower time investment to actually click the short clip. And then people tend to stick the phone in their pocket and continue to listen to maybe 15, 20 minutes anyway. So I just want to show you a great example of this from our mothership in public service journalism, the BBC. And we saw this example also.
Hello, this is BBC News. I'm Andrew Rogers. On the way. World leaders welcome the International Criminal Court's arrest warrants for Russia's President Putin.
It's a very important step, and I'm very pleased to see it's been done at last.
Donald Trump says he expects to be arrested on Tuesday. And the chief executive of the SNP has resigned.
And you can see the different news atoms here, the little clips that they compile into a playlist that gives you a really good experience. A short news update first and leading into more in-depth content. I also think that this point is so important in relation to AI and metadata, because if you have smaller chunks of stuff, it's actually easier to work with, for example, automation and those kind of solutions. So go from broadcast chunks to digital atoms. My fourth one is when it comes to AI, you have to get the senior editors involved. This is not a thing that should be done only in the development teams or the product department. This is our digital primary platforms that we are talking about. So we have to really have a discussion about how do we explain these services to our audiences? Can we even use words like AI content? Does the audience understand that? I think there's a need for a discussion about whole new standards for actually explaining what AI is and what we do in our products. And that discussion about AI transparency, I think it's just going to grow over the next year or so. So the last advice, or just a reminder to us all, I mean, it's about the journalism, isn't it? It's about the editorial value. It's about our mission. I mean, in all this world of content, I think there's a new role for us as journalists from serious media companies, always to be kind of guides to the truth. Some people are predicting that it's going to be a mass flood of kind of disinformation or information just generated by these chatbots. Maybe there's an even more important role for us as journalists there to try to explain it, to investigate it, to have the knowledge to really look into, for example, the bias in these models and all that.